off in the last inning.
He's not resurrected. He didn't die.
He's the last guy to get out in the last inning, and he's resurrected on second base. He got out, and he's back alive on the base path. What do you call that? You call it. We'll call it the Jesus runner. We'll call it the Jesus runner.
Pinch runs. Is someone dying on the cross for somebody else?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they're getting sacrificed. Literally, they're literally getting sacrificed.
Just like it's just such a weird thing to die on the hill for. Just accept it. Who cares?
Because it's not right. Because we already have the definition of ghost runner. We already have a definition of it, and it's wrong, and it's just wrong. Call it the Manfred Man. Just don't call it fucking ghost runner when it's not a ghost. Man,
you done?
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
Welcome to Subway Sports Talk. My name is Peter Kennedy, and I am your host. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in to SST on Apple Podcast app, Spotify, and on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review on those podcast apps on YouTube. Subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when the new episodes are here for you to listen to, because guess what? You need to know. All right. If you like the show, you got to know when the episodes are out so you can listen to them and then tell us all how great we are, or how ridiculous we are, or how stupid certain rules might be. And not just about the rules, but the naming of the rules. The naming of certain rules might really piss people off. You know, that's true. That's true. But we're going to talk about that in a minute. First and foremost, though, my guest today, the designated hitter, is here to talk about baseball. Because baseball is back, baby. And we're here to talk about the Mets and the Yankees, as we do. Alec Argento in the house. What's up?
What's up?
Freaking, I don't know, dude. What's up?
I've been saying "saw" as the response every time for like 4 years now, and you got to accept it and have something prepared when you ask that question.
That one just got me flabbergasted. I'm feeling a little ghastly because of the ghost runners right now. Andrew Calagna, what is up, my brother?
Stick it in my craw, man. Just stick it in my craw. I don't know, man. I'm good. I'm ready to talk about the big New York Ranger news. That everyone's really talking about on the internet. Chris Kreider passed Mark Messier for 7th on all-time on goals scored. How about that?
Shout out to Chris Kreider.
Who knew?
Wait, 7th all-time in Rangers history?
Yeah, past Mark Messier.
Now, Kreider was drafted what? What would you say? About 20?
He made his debut around 2011.
There you go.
Good year.
That was a good year. So in about 12 years, he's went up the ranks up to 7. Good for him. And now, Twitter is a great place most of the time, sometimes. And specifically in this past day or two with this Patrick Kane trade to the Rangers, you find out, who the Ranger fans are. I guess, honestly, on your timeline, who the Rangers fans are. They're usually, they're active. They're talking about it. How you doing? How you been? But now with a trade like this, Drew, and you are a real Rangers fan, a real hockey fan, are you seeing more people out of the woodworks? Like, oh, Patrick Kane, how you doing? Like, I don't really know if this guy's good anymore, but what's the story here?
Yeah, but that's about right, because he's an actual name. Like, non-hockey fans have actually heard of Patrick Kane before today. Most hockey fans, he's I made the equivalent in the group chat to he's like the Dirk Nowitzki of the NHL, like the greatest non-American, he's the greatest American hockey player. Dirk Nowitzki is the greatest European basketball player in a game run by Americans.
Gotcha.
So the equivalent of that.
The inverse, if you will.
Yes. So a big star who has, great chemistry with Panarin. He's a big time playoff guy. He's a 3-time world champion. So a lot of pedigree coming to the Rangers as they make their playoff push.
They saying it's us and the Warriors, super teams.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, is that a reference to the Knicks when Derrick Rose?
Yes.
Yeah. Nice play, Alec. That's really good. Well, that's enough of hockey talk right there. That's fair. No, that's enough. That's enough hockey talk. But no, it is exciting for the Rangers. I hope they do well. Maybe I'll dabble in some exciting times in the playoffs, but good stuff for them. Let me go through the plan here real quick. I'm also realizing that if people are listening on the podcast right now and not on YouTube, they may be very confused about why we were so giddy and laughy in the beginning there. If you didn't see it, I don't know if I even put it in the podcast one yet. Drew's very angry about the naming of one specific rule. We're going to get into it later. We're also going to talk about the baseball rules in general. I'm sure you guys have heard about the conversations around this and the rules themselves. We'll give our takes. But first, we are going to start off talking about the New York Knicks. And also, I forgot to mention this as well. We're talking about the Mets and the Yankees, obviously. When we got Drew and Alec in the crib here to talk sports, we're talking Mets and Yankees as much as we possibly can. So we're going to start to preview some of that fun stuff, positional battles, rotational battles, bullpen battles, etc. Have some fun with that as we do inch closer to baseball season. We will talk about the Knicks as well. So let's start there. Because Alec, I kind of got to start with you. We had a podcast 2, maybe 3 weeks ago now. 3 weeks? Does that sound about fair?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's accurate. Okay. And since that podcast, Alec, the Knicks are smoking hot.
7-8, baby.
And I'm not just talking about Josh Hart and himself being smoking hot.
Yow!
But the Knicks can't lose right now. The Knicks are playing really good, consistent, exciting basketball. And those couple weeks ago, Al, when we talked about the Knicks, you said something pretty specific about what should happen. In fact, you might not feel that way at the moment right now.
No.
So why don't you round that up for us here? 3 weeks ago to now, the Knicks are feeling really, really good. How are you feeling?
I was big wrong, and that's probably an SST first for me to just throw that out there. I demanded for a Tom Thibodeau firing, which I had never done in the 3 years that he's been here, but that's what it took. So I'll give myself credit for that. I'm a hand up kind of guy. I'll own it. I'll own it that I said it.
Wait. I like how you admitting that you are wrong. You find a way to compliment yourself. It's very impressive, actually.
Well, that's not wrong. The fact that I affected some change, that's something that happened. Objectively, that happened, right? I'm a superstitious guy, and the good comes with the bad, right? If I take off my jersey in the third quarter and they give up a touchdown, that's on me. But if I'm the one who's ranting, Tom Thibodeau should be fired, and maybe he should be fired. Maybe he should be. If I say that again, maybe they'll go on another 7 of 8 win streak. But anyway. The Knicks rule, they are so fun to watch right now. This is probably the most fun stretch of basketball I have watched since the 2012-2013 season. And honestly, it might even be more fun because these are all homegrown players. This team is so annoying to play, and it's just so much fun to watch. You have Mitch back, who didn't skip a beat at all. Josh Hart fits this team like a glove and completely redefined what our second unit looks like. Now you have Quickly and Hart, who can both be playmakers and both score. And then now you have a legitimate closing lineup, getting RJ out of there, who's had his struggles this year. And you have to give Tibbs credit, too, because everything that was a knock on Tibbs his entire career completely upended it this year, and it's worked. So maybe bullying works.
Confirmed bullying works. I agree. No, but seriously, you're right, Alec. It's been lovely to watch this team. And similarly to the Rangers right now, we're just talking about how, some people who you don't know if they even care about hockey are coming out of the woodworks, talking about Patrick Kane on Twitter, talking about all the stuff that's so exciting about their favorite team on the hockey ice. That's what they call it, right? The hockey ice.
Yeah, for sure.
So now basketball fans, or I shouldn't even say basketball fans, people who are New York fans who are Knicks fans by trade are now popping out of the woodworks as well, saying how exciting this team is. I've talked to my friends the other day. They're tapped in. Shout out Logan and Mule, big time friend of the pod, been on many times. Like they're saying like, yo, I am now looking forward to Knicks games, whereas different portions of this season, I didn't care. It wasn't a priority. I wasn't like seeking it out, but I've watched some games and now I'm locked in. That's what the Knicks are providing right now to their fans. And you have to just keep tipping your cap consistently to the Brunson-Randle combo. They are like going out there every night, giving that star level effort. And that's something that you couldn't have said about Randle last year. Obviously, Brunson wasn't in that position last year, so it wasn't truly expected. Anybody who's a Knicks fan, anybody who's a big NBA fan who had their own predictions for this season, even the most bullish Knicks person out there wasn't expecting to have two players at this level, this caliber, and then a cohesive unit of bench people who made sense, right?
They're solid 1 through 9, man. They're solid.
And it's crazy that we got here, Alan. That's what I'm trying to get to is the fact that it's kind of nuts they got to this point right now, and it doesn't feel fake. It doesn't feel fluky. It doesn't feel like we're going to be regretting this podcast in a week or two, because the rotation makes sense. There's depth there. There's defense on both sides of the rotation, starters and second unit, and it makes sense. And if you thought about this team in freaking October, November, and you're looking at Fournier, Rose, Reddish, and you're like, what the hell's going on? None of the what the hell's going on even exists right now. And it's kind of wild. And I'm like actually wrapping my head around it.
Yeah.
Would you say it's similar to like the Giants situation where because everyone was pleasantly surprised by the Giants this season. So again, I'm not an NBA guy. It's a well-known fact that I'm not an NBA guy. But would you say that's comparable? Or would you say the Knicks are better than what the Giants were during the season here?
I would say they're better. The Giant, like what Pete said before, the like there's no flukiness. The Giants season this season reminds me of the Knicks season 2 seasons ago, where surprise 4 seed, there was spark plugs off the bench when they had the Derrick Rose trade, and it kind of carried them. They got hot at the right time, but they definitely struggled throughout the year, and they didn't really beat a lot of good teams, the Giants, this year. I mean, they did. They definitely had some good, but they, when they played like the Eagles, for example, they got blown out. This Knicks team can go toe-to-toe with any team. They may not win, but you can't count them out. For the past 10 years, you watch a Knicks game and you said, okay, they're playing the Bucks. They're going to lose that game, right? Now, I don't know. They probably lose, but maybe not. And they just beat the Celtics yesterday, right? Like that's how it works. So it definitely feels real, legit. And going into the playoffs, you have a lot more confidence this year than you did 2 years ago, because Randall got exposed because he was the only player and he would kick it out to Reggie Bullock or Elfrid Payton. He doesn't have to do that this year. You are solid 1 through 9. There is not one bad player in the rotation. Even our worst player this year, being RJ, is not a bad player. He's just not the guy that you want him to be at the moment. So
yeah, and it quickly wasn't going up against like a Norman Powell in the 6-man conversation. Like he is probably a front runner level 6-man this year, except Norman Powell's been just a monster the entire year, carrying the Clippers offense when Kawhi and Paul George have been in and out. So he's probably not going to win the award, but he's going to get votes. And Andrew, I'm really glad you brought that analogy up, because I've been workshopping a take over the past like 2 weeks that I just couldn't quite put my finger on. And I'm glad that I didn't go ahead and do it earlier, because I don't think it makes as much sense as it did about 3 weeks ago, right? When the Knicks were kind of up and down still. They're a playoff team for sure, but how good are they? Are they super mediocre, whatever? And I was going to go out with this take. The Knicks are Daniel Jones. That was going to be my take. I was going to do a whole thing about how the Knicks are officially good. They're officially crossed the threshold of not being a liability, not being bad, being not just mediocre, but decent, solid, good, whatever words you want to use. With Daniel Jones went through that threshold this year. There was definitely some stuff that you still want to see more of from him, throwing touchdowns, etc. But you give him the benefit of the doubt without the receivers, yada, yada. Knicks were in that same exact zone where you looked at them and you said, I know for a fact they will be a top 7 team. This is before the Nets trade with Kevin Durant, of course. They are a top 7 team in this Eastern Conference, probably a top 6 team. Now they're even past that. So this take is almost null and void, which is why I think Alec's point was even better, that the Knicks from 2 years ago are more like the Giants from this year, because it really feels like they passed that threshold and they're now knocking at the door of the Cleveland Cavaliers, right? Whereas a month ago, I was telling Alec, I don't see it. I don't think they're as good as the Cavs. I don't think they can hang with a team like that. And now you can have a real conversation saying, oh, they may not be as good at the top 3 or 4 players, but they are way better at a depth location that can put them above them in a series, right? So they have passed that threshold of just being mediocre and respectable to a team that like the Sixers, the Cavs are going to be like, okay, this is a serious battle going into playoff, not like we're playing the Knicks, we should be fine, right? So there's something has changed over the last month.
You're not getting a gentleman's sweep like you did against the Hawks series. Like, and if you do, it's going to be wired. It's going to be back and forth the entire series, even if it's goes a shorter series. This team's good. They're probably going to be better. And we always need a superstar on the team, but like, I don't know that they're progressing with what they have and making the right moves. And who knows, maybe a superstar emerges, right? Maybe RJ Barrett figures it out next year because he has that actual offseason to work on it without the contract situation that he had. And maybe he's the third piece that they need, and they're awesome there. You're not going to get a Giannis on this team, right? And if that's the case, you can maybe get Jalen Brunson to be your Donovan Mitchell that we wanted, right? Or something like that. So it's just exciting. This team is so sustainable at this point. It's just, you're not losing anyone important. You can extend people. You're in a healthy cap situation, even though they're over. They own all the bird rights to all their players, so they can sign whoever the heck they want. And they still have a ton of picks. And that Dallas pick is looking better and better every day.
Right. You don't know where that pick's going to end up. If it's, I mean, likely assume the Mavs will be in the playoffs. You assume it, but you can't really put it in stone just yet, like you maybe felt about a couple weeks back. So yeah, the Knicks, man, they're serious, and the Mitchell Robinson return feels really freaking good, because missing him was one of those missing pieces where the team was turning around, but there was just something missing with Hartenstein and Sims doing their best jobs. Like, they were still kind of a weak point on this team. Mitch has been phenomenal this year, and he deserves more credit nationwide, whatever, league-wide, if you will. He's starting to get some of it. I've been hearing more and more Knicks talk throughout the NBA league-wide level podcasts and talk shows and et cetera, which always makes me nervous, because I also am a Mets fan, and every time my team gets national coverage, I get a little excited when I'm in my car. I'm like, ooh, my favorite NBA podcast is talking about the Knicks in a positive manner. Wow, this is so fun. And then, like, usually everything crashes and burns. But I don't feel that right now. I'm feeling confident. I even went into that game against the Celtics last night. You know, Jaylen Brown's out. I'm like, I don't care. The Celtics are still probably a better team even without Jaylen Brown. And I was like, the Knicks don't need to win, but they need to compete. And they shut me up. I needed more confidence. That was the case there. So Al, any more last words on the Knicks here before we move to baseball?
Nah, but the only thing I'll say is they had like the third hardest strength of schedule for the remainder of the season. They're beating all the hardest teams in that strength of schedule, and now they're down to 18th. And if they get out of next week with the Heat and the Celtics and the Nets, although the Nets don't really count anymore, unscathed, watch out for this team. They're not going to catch the Sixers or anything like that, but by the end of the season, they might be knocking on the door at the standings. Not that it matters, but just to show you where they've been at. And since that 9-man rotation has been out there, I think it's been 40 games or something like that. I think they're the fifth best team in basketball. So,
yeah, and if they can be solidly a 5 seed, you feel like you have a chance going against the Cavs. You really do. You feel like you have a chance there. Drew, any last thoughts here?
No.
Perfect. Subway Sports Talk, Kennedy, Alec Argento,
No notes.
Andrew Calagna, here to talk about baseball, the designated hitters in the house. So let's do some of that. Talk about the Mets and Yankees, about their rotations and their positional battles, et cetera, in a minute. But we have to talk about these rules a little bit. Drew, I think you actually have the rules up if you want to quickly run through them, just since I know you have the link up there, because there's a couple, and there's a lot of buzz. There's a lot of negativity. There's some people kind of zagging and saying it's not negative, and we're going to parse out how we feel about that situation. So, Drew, take it away.
Sure. So we have the new shift rule. So obviously, I think that's the biggest of on the offensive side anyway. That's now you have to have 2 runners on each side of the infield. They can't be touching the outfield grass. So on each side of second base, you can shift the outfielder over, but that'll just create even more, I guess, a risk reward type of situation there for someone trying to go the other way. The pitch clock, which I think will be, we already saw in spring training, a game being decided by the pitch clock rule. I think after like the first month, people won't be really talking about it. So it's down to, I think it's 20 seconds with runners on base and 18 seconds when it's empty. And that also limits the amount of times that guys can throw over. So that'll, in theory, help out the run game, which will also brings us to the larger bases. So they were 15 by 15. Now they're 18 by 18. If you saw, I don't know if you saw some of the pictures going around. It's actually a pretty significant difference. So, if you think of any bang bang play going back the last like 5 years, you think that runner is going to be safe now. If every time Brett Gardner got thrown out by like half an inch, like, those were all been stolen bases now. And then the Manfred Man is here to stay in extra innings. I will not call it what what many people around the internet are calling it.
Many people everywhere are calling it.
Well, many people are wrong. It doesn't matter what many people are saying.
So call it
matters. It's not the Ghost Runner. It's the Zombie Runner. The Ghost Runner was a term already created, but when you're playing baseball as a kid, right, and you don't have enough people, you say, "Oh, there's a Ghost Runner on first," and they only advance one base. That's the definition of a Ghost Runner. It's been there for years and years and years and years. It's a Zombie Runner. The guy who last got out is resurrected, put on second base, which I personally. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of Alec just in general, but I'm just not a fan of this rule. To begin with, at least put it in place in like the 11th inning or something like that. Don't immediately, I don't think anyone's ever complained about a baseball game being too long. It's the moments that it's the downtime. Someone, I think it was the Pitching Ninja that put together a side-by-side video, with the pitch clock. Someone threw a complete half inning before, I think they compared it to a 2016 playoff game where it took the same amount of time for someone to throw a half inning than for someone to throw one pitch in the playoffs. So, that's the time. That's what you want to get rid of. So it's going to speed up the game. But that I get, but I'm not in agreement of, trying to end the game as soon as possible. That's like a player and, MLB friendly thing, not really fan friendly, in my opinion, anyway.
So we're going to cover all that real quick, but let's stick on this whole runner situation because I think Drew, this is a classic.
The what runner situation?
The runner situation. So,
the runner.
How diplomatic of you.
Runner situation. I'm getting there. I think I'm going to take the side that Alec knows I'm going to take here. Drew is right.
Who cares? Is my opinion.
A ghost runner implies that it's like an invisible being, that there's no one there. A ghost runner doesn't truly exist other than in theory. Right, Drew? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Would you say that zombies really exist? Who cares? What are we talking about here?
But at least a zombie implies a person being present.
Yeah, a resurrected person. The last guy that got out is now resurrected. He's on the field of play. It makes perfect sense.
He didn't die.
He's not a ghost either. But it's
so. What does it matter? So you're getting technical. You're like standing on ceremonies here.
What's going to a god?
Because the term already existed. That is my overall point. The term already existed. Can
I throw out something that might shatter your worldview? Maybe not everyone growing up called it a ghost runner outside of the area you grew up in the Northeast, or just more specifically.
Definitely, I did call it a ghost. I definitely called it a ghost on first.
I didn't say you didn't. I'm just saying we don't know what they call it in Chicago. Kids growing up in Idaho or something like that, they might call it something different. You're coming in with your worldview and you're pushing it on me. I don't like that.
That East Coast bias, man.
You're a liberal elite.
New York elite, man.
But on the idea of the zombie runner, I think that I kind of agree with you, Andrew. I think that having the 10th inning as a normal inning of baseball makes sense to me, and maybe they'll get there just because I do think that there's some sort of weird advantage. I don't know if the numbers flush out in this regard or not but there's like an advantage for the away team, right? Like the pressure gets put on the home team because the away team is so easily able to kind of push that one run across. And then all of a sudden the home team, who's supposed to have the last licks and the advantage and the whatever, is playing down 1-0 for seemingly a stupid reason of this runner just existing on second base, right? So I don't hate the idea of the 10th inning being normal, 11th or 12th, bring in the zombie and figure it out to get this thing moving along, because the main point of this rule is to save arms, to save bullpens, to save players from not ruining 2 days of subsequent baseball, right? So in that regard, I totally understand the rule and I'm here for it. Obviously, it's great that they just completely get rid of it in the playoffs. That makes perfect sense. Thank God they did that. If they put this in the playoffs, that'd be pretty crappy. So generally from that rule, I'm fine with it. It doesn't bother me that it's in the 10th. I wish it was in the 11th or 12th because, like you said, Drew, I think there's some complaints about games being too long, but no one's complaining about like the 10th, 11th, 12th inning being too long, right? Like they're complaining about the Yankees versus Red Sox taking 3 hours and 45 minutes on a 9-inning game, not about, oh, this one game out of 3 weeks went 12 and took 3 hours and 45 minutes. So I agree with you for the most part there. Alec, as far as the rule, not the name of the rule, do you even care at this point? Are you used to it?
No, I'll never be used to it. I don't think. I don't like it, but and I agree with everything you guys are saying. But just ultimately, and we'll talk about it later. But it is, Drew said before that people aren't complaining about games being too long, and I always say that to people I'm friends with who don't like baseball and don't watch baseball, but they are like they're interested in what's going on right now because they do feel that it's too long, right? Like they've got you and me for life. 100%. I'm going to be a Yankee fan for life. I'm not going to not watch. So we're coming in with like a very myopic perspective of just like, this is what I know. This is what I like. But if it does grow the sport, I mean, the average audience of like of an MLB broadcast is like 78 million years old. So, you got to lower down the age group there. And if it gets people going, it gets people going. I'd like to see more baseball on ESPN or something like that. And if this is what gets it there into the national audience, I'm down for it. So happy they're not doing it in the playoffs. I don't know if they're doing like the pitch clock and stuff like that in the playoffs. I hope they're not.
They are. I think they are. Yeah.
That worries me more than what the other stuff. But we can talk about that.
Yeah. So go ahead.
There was also now they also, I forgot to mention, they also limited the amount of the hitters that are pitched because they got so out of hand in the last couple of years where like teams were throwing out position players, throwing innings when they were only down like 4 or 5 runs to try and save the bullpen. So now you have to be down at least, I think it's like 8 or 10 runs or something like that for you to be able to bring in a position player to throw an inning. So
they have a mercy rule. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So at least now you'll have more competitive, baseball and teams not just throwing in the towel in like the 6th inning when they're down by like 5 runs.
Right.
So I think that's better for the sport too.
Start pitching, like what are we doing here? So to move on to some of the other rules here, so we don't spend too much time on this. The shift thing is going to be different, very different. I know I'm torn on it. I'm very torn on the rule because from a perspective of stripping away a defense from using data and just knowledge to be better, it hurts me from a competitive standpoint. Like that is something I don't subscribe to. However, the idea of more actionable plays, more hits, more base runners, the bigger bases leading to more stolen bases, like I'm for that. And my overall take is that I'm happy baseball's trying something because there's been too many years. We've been doing this podcast for like 4 years now, the three of us, 3 years, 4 years, whatever it's been.
At least.
And how many conversations have we had leading into a season saying like baseball needs to do something to get more buzz, to get more conversation, to get more of a national buzz? Like locally, this game is thriving. Nationally, this game is irrelevant in a lot of people's eyes, and that's unfortunate, right? So that's something that we all agree on. We've been talking to our blue in the face about what they can do to make it better. So whether or not we agree with the shift, whether or not we agree with the pitch clock, they are trying something. And that is something I easily subscribe to because they can change these rules. These rules were changed now. They can be changed again. And maybe they're going to make an adjustment to make the rule that we don't like that much a little bit better. Right. So from that side of things, I'm for them attempting to make the game a little bit more action packed, a little bit more exciting, a little bit more offensive, I guess. I don't know. Maybe the pitching is getting too good here. Yeah. So I'm for that generally, even if some of the specifics make me frustrated as somebody who, grew up with this game and whatnot. So I don't know if you guys agree with that general take here or not, but that's kind of my overall take. I'll get into some more specifics later.
I promise you'll get used to it. This is no different than a defensive 3 seconds or an illegal formation or something like that. You need to have stuff like this. The shift has made the game really not fun in a lot of ways. I mean, players can't adapt to it. They can't change their swing. The whole argument of, Joey Gallo should just be able to hit it the other way. It just the experiment's over. They can't do it. They're not going to change how they're doing it. And you do need more offense going forward. So it does feel weird and it feels like, hey, you're telling on them for figuring out a good way to do it. Teams will always find a way to get an advantage. That's professional sports, right? So if away from them, I promise you the Rays in 2 years will be doing something completely different that we never thought was even possible, and everyone will start emulating it in 5 years. So I think I'm all about the shift going away, and it's not like they're completely saying no. They're just like triaging it a little bit, right? They're saying, hey, you can't have 6 people in the outfield and nobody covering third base or anything like that.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it's going to be more player specific positives than league overall specific, because I feel like it's going to be helpful to, because mostly lefties are the ones that get shifted on to begin with. So like Aaron Hicks got shifted like 92% of the time last year, so it's going to help him specifically, but I don't think it's going to help Aaron Judge all that much, because obviously Aaron Judge is actually a good baseball player and Aaron Hicks is not. But like you'll see offensive improvement from him and those type of guys that and mostly left-handers. But I don't think offense around the league is going to just skyrocket. I think you'll see more balls in play, and I think you'll see more action on the bases. But I don't think that's going to lead to necessarily like pitchers like being irrelevant, because pitchers are still, everyone's still throwing 100. Everyone's still throwing the nasty, the sweeper. Every team seems to have learned now. So it's just trying to balance in the scales a little bit more each way. I feel like pitchers are still going to get their strikeouts and get their due. We'll just see a little more action on the base path, which is ultimately a positive.
And yeah, I think that's all positive. So I'm for that. And I think I also cracked the code. I was hanging out with a buddy of mine, old baseball teammate of mine, Mike Topola. Alec knows him. And I think we discovered why some folks are so mad about this, specifically people who, maybe we know very well, because this change is stripping away the advantages that players like that we know had in baseball, right? So like all the people who we know who played baseball didn't hit 35 home runs a game, right? It didn't exist in Staten Island high school baseball because we used wood bats, unlike the rest of the freaking world. So like the good type of baseball players that we grew up around, that we played with, that maybe we were or were not, like those advantages are gone for us, right? Like we were forced to hit the other way. We were forced to be good at defensive positioning in order to be a competitive baseball player, because we weren't hitting 40 home runs. Like it didn't exist for players who are now sitting on their couch watching this game like they could still play. That's got to be part of it to me a little bit here, where, the guy who's on his couch who watches 162 Yankee games a year, who was a scrappy second baseman in his day of little league and high school, he lived on shooting the ball through the between the second base and first base spot. Now that doesn't exist. Or he lived off sheeting up the middle, playing shortstop, whatever it may be. And that idea of taking away competitive advantages from players who can't hit 40 home runs a year, I think that's got to be part of it here, where the baseball purist, and that's the people who are mad about this, right? You only know the people who are that mad are the people who love baseball, who watched it, like you said, no matter what. They're the ones who are upset, and they're not going anywhere. Anybody who says, I'm not watching this game anymore, it's ridiculous, the pitch clock is fucking crazy, and this is not even baseball anymore. Like, they're still going to be tapped into Yankees, Blue Jays on a Wednesday night at 9:45 p.m. That's where they're going to be. They're not going anywhere.
Nothing that's being done hasn't already been done in a trial, an experiment aspect in other sports and succeeded. Nothing that they're doing. This is all aspects of what the NBA has done, what the NFL has done. It's all the same exact thing, just modernizing the game, which realistically they do need to do, because, I mean, the last year was tough to watch. Last year was a bad year for baseball in terms of offense. I mean, whether it's, doing things like this, getting the juice balls back or something like that, they need to make more offense. Because what do you think of when you think of like the most exciting times in baseball? You think of the 90s, you think of the home run race and everything like that. You think of offense. As much as I love to watch a good pitcher's duel, as much as I love to watch in between every pitch in the playoffs, it's not going to captivate the other audience. I do worry that it is so much change at once. That's my kind of worry, but I think they do need to kind of rip the Band-Aid off, but it'll make me a little squeamish watching it. And I think there's going to be a big adjustment period for probably the entirety of the season. You're going to see weird things like that person that I forget who did it, but the person striking out because of the pitch clock, the hitter clock, and everything like that. You're going to see wonky stuff as they're getting used to it, just because it's so much at once. But they had a lot of changes during the COVID season. They got through it. Some of them are here to stay, and this, what the NBA looks like now is not what the NBA looked like 30 years ago, and the game got better. So.
Yeah, it'll just be fucking infuriating when the Yankees like lose a game because someone's not in the batter's box by the 8-second mark. Like, oh man, like so many TVs will have like punches in them because of that happening in like the tri-state area. Like, that's when you'll hear more about it. But I feel like after like the first like month of the season, like when players get adjusted to it, because minor leaguers have been playing with the pitch clock already. So like the kids that are coming up now, they're already used to it. So it's really about the veterans. It's really about, some of the slower pitchers adjusting and things like that. So I feel like the first couple months of the season, maybe by like June, I feel like it won't be a story anymore. But there's going to be the Yankees are going to lose a game because of the rule.
But it'll happen to everyone. It'll happen to everyone.
It's going to suck so bad.
And you know what, though? I think even sooner than that. We were joking in the group chat about spring training being irrelevant and how I watched the summer league and that's irrelevant too. And like all this stuff that preseason football irrelevant, like all this stuff is so irrelevant. But spring training this year has had a lot of buzz about it with all these new rule changes. And I think that's a good thing, right? If you think about how these rules are implemented, and Alec, you just mentioned like everything at once, it's a lot. It's a lot for fans to kind of wrap their head around. The fact that this spring training has caught enough buzz about it, that people are having the conversations now about the rule changes, it just relieves the pain of when the season starts in a month or so. You don't have to have these conversations for as long. It's going to be the first like week or two of the season. This is going to be a conversation and it's going to be over. And yeah, every once in a while you'll have a big game end on something stupid, or the first out of the ninth inning in a close game when it's Aaron Judge is going to get called out for something stupid. And there'll be a little buzz. There'll be a little bit of a WFAN open on that about how ridiculous it is or whatever. We're all going to move on. We're all going to get over it. The pitch clock is a good thing. And if they have to change the time from, 18 to 22 next year, or 24 to 28 when there's runners on, whatever it's going to be, like, that's all good. It's all good. And the fact that they're hitting it right now is a home run to me, because we're getting through all these BS of the three of us on a podcast talking about shit that people care about, but also do they really care? I don't know. Like, who are we talking to? We're talking to the hardos again, who are going to watch every Yankee game no matter what.
Listen, there was plenty of people who complained about the designated hitter in the National League for their entire lives. Nobody's complaining about it anymore. Nobody's saying now that it's here that they wish that they had a pitcher hitting, right?
You're right.
You'll get used to this in a year.
Yeah, or like where you had to throw 4 balls instead of just telling someone to walk, because Manny Ramirez hit that ball that one time, or it was Miguel Cabrera that hit that ball that one time, stuff like that. But I think even the bigger rule change that wasn't implemented here is the strike challenge system that's probably going to come next year, and that was the one I was kind of hoping that was going to come this year, because I'm just so sick of Aaron Judge getting called out on those low strike calls, and to be able to challenge it and get those overturned and have his on base percentage be like 700. Like,
but Robo-umps are coming next year, aren't they?
No, I think they're testing out the Robo. I think in the minor leagues this year they're doing Robo-umps. I think Monday through Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday they're using the challenge system, where it's an actual umpire calling, and then like you get 3 challenges per game or something like that. So like
that slows the game down, though.
No, the challenges it's instantaneous.
It's like tennis, tennis is like there it is.
Yeah, it's like the guy I saw a video on it. It took like 7 seconds for them to challenge it and for him to get the call. Like the batter like taps his helmet. They check, the guy gets the earpiece. He said, "Oh, that was like the system says it was a ball." Continue the at bat, and that's it. Like
I will say one thing I will miss. Like that. I will miss one thing. I guarantee you, I will always miss once they eventually take it away. Having no more managers running out screaming at umpires. That will suck when that will no longer be a thing. Whether it's the challenge system or because like even now, managers really have to find a good opportunity to go screaming at the home plate umpire, because everything is challengeable at this point. So. that'll really suck one day when like our grandkids are watching and like they don't get to witness a Terry Collins freak out on the mound or anything.
No more
like
asses in the jackpot. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
exactly.
God, give us a shot. Gotta give us a shot.
I'm trying, Terry. And that actually will be missed. And now, like managers will have to just admit that they're going just to get a rise from their team. Like Aaron Boone gets thrown out like 7 times a year. It's like, oh, and look at the Yankees how they responded. Who says Aaron Boone doesn't have any emotion? We're gonna have that conversation, but it'll just be like, oh, he was just mad, so he just ran out there.
And think of the T-shirt sales that'll go down when they can't make like a new Savages in the Box T-shirt set that goes all over the internet or S in the jackpot.
Yeah, right. And you know what? You know what will be good though? I think this could be fun in stadium experience. When there's a challenge, you got to have some sort of chant that goes on, like change. Like that could be fun.
You figure that out. I'm in, but you got to do the work on that one.
And somebody will do it.
Workshop it, man.
Go around. But I think the hybrid of regular umps with the challenge is a good intro to robo umps. We'll probably get there, I think, more in like 5 to 10 years rather than in 2 years, I think, on the robo ump front. But yeah, nonetheless. Anything else? Oh, go ahead.
Real quick, Drew. Did they change the challenge system to like extend more if you get the call right?
I don't think it's always been you get to keep the challenge if you get it right. I don't think you get more challenges. I think you get to keep your challenge if you get it right.
I'd like them to give more.
Well, I think it'll be fun when like Kyle Higashioka's up in like the 7th inning and like challenges like the second pitch of an at bat, and we're like, that was the last challenge we had.
What do you hate more, Drew? Do you hate Kyle Higashioka more than the Ghost Runner?
Oh, man, that's like
real Sophie's choice.
Yeah, really. It's like you want to die of cancer or a gunshot wound to the head. I don't know, man. Probably
pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Pretty obvious choice. Last thing on the rules, they did officially kind of maneuver the scheduling around a little bit this year, correct? Is that right, Drew?
Yeah.
Yes, it's a balanced schedule, so every team's going to play every other team, which is exciting for me because I'm going to be in Colorado on a bachelor party, which I maneuvered a bunch of Met fans to go see the Yankees play the Rockies. So I'm really excited about that one. Shout out to Mount Burns and the bachelor party.
Yeah, which I like that idea too. You get to see every team. Like, the Mets don't need to see the Brewers more than like once or twice or whatever it's going to be, right? Like you don't need to play some NL random division an extra time. Like play everybody. Why not? More exciting. Get to see all the players. You get that time where Shohei's in New York, not just against the Yankees, but he's playing the Mets too. Like all that stuff. That's a good thing. I think the Mets schedule did work out pretty weirdly. I was listening to a pod about it earlier. They play the Marlins like 7 times in the first like couple weeks of the season and then don't play them until September. Like it's like nuts how that worked out. So that's kind of weird. And the same thing with the Phillies. Like they play the Phillies only in like April and then like September again. Like it's very, very weird to land like that, but whatever. I'll move on. I don't really care.
Yeah.
It is difficult though. Like in baseball, knowing like having your teams that you have in your division that you're going to play is nice for you to be able to work your own standings, right? Like to be able to control it. It's different in basketball because this is essentially what basketball's been doing for like the past 15 years or something like that. But only 82 games. So for 162, it's really weird not being able to like, hey, I'm 3 games behind the Red Sox. I'm 3 games behind the Marlins, for example. I'm not playing them again until September. That's tough, right? That's really tough to do in the standings. So I don't know if I love that one yet. I like the idea of it, but implementation wise, it might be a little weird.
Exactly.
Unless they move to an NBA standing system where it's like top 8 teams, right? Instead of division leaders. And
I hope that'll be. I think whenever they get expansion done, I think they're talking about Nashville and Vegas having like the 2 new teams. So I assume when expansion happens and you have 32, you can go to an NBA style standings like that. So I would anticipate that coming down the pipeline, but I think they have to figure out Tampa and Oakland's ballpark situation first before they can expand.
Well, I'm sure they would also have to like gerrymander, like they'd have to restructure the conferences and everything like that. It's so much change. I mean, the problem is that it's all been so overdue that now they're doing it all in like the next 2-3 years or so, and it's a lot. And like, I do think you'll lose some fans. like I don't think it's as much as like we were talking about before, where hey, you got me for life. Not everyone's me and Drew, right? There are a lot of people that are like you, for example. Like you don't watch every Mets game,
right here.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't watch 162. I watch 82. Right? You know what I mean? I watch half the games. It's tough to watch every single game for me.
Right. So like I do think that a lot of those people, there will be some drop-offs there. And I'm not saying it's going to be like 5 people in the country. Like there's going to be a substantial you just hope that the risk reward is there for all the new people that you're going to get. But I don't know that there's a lot of it might just be the way that it is with baseball, right? I don't know that there's a ton of people that are going to want to get in there. They don't do a great job of marketing their players. Like I don't know any like 12-year-old kid who's like, I want to go watch the Yankee game tonight, whether you trim it down to 2.5 hours and you do all this stuff or not. You know, it is I'm a little skeptical of a lot of things. I hope it all works out, but that's where I'm standing right now.
I think, again, it's a local. I say they're excited to go see Aaron Judge. I don't think they're necessarily excited to go see the Yankees. So, anyway, I totally lost my train of thought there, but I agree.
Cut it.
Very nice. Very nice. Good job, everybody. So I mean, we'll see where all that stuff goes. And the whole idea of the Super East Division, that was a big talking point a couple weeks ago, and that guy wrote the article of like
that was my point.
Mets, Phillies, Red Sox, and Yankees in the division. What a disaster for us. That would be horrible. It would be so exciting, but it would be horrendous. Like you got the freaking Reds and Brewers and whoever in one division, and we got the Mets, Yankees, Red Sox, and Phillies. That'd be brutal. That'd be very tough. But what are you gonna do? It's probably not gonna happen anyway. So it's all good. It's all good.
And the balance schedule is there to, again, it's more of a baseball's effort to grow the game. So now everyone's going to be able to go because the Yankees draw wherever they go. So now every single team will be able to go out and see the Yankees come into town. So, like, in that sense, it's again, I think this is more of baseball actually waking up and saying, hey, we need to actually do some things to grow the game. So it's all, I think, it's going to take some getting used to, but I feel like it's going to be a net positive overall for the game of baseball. Again, you might lose some fans, but I feel like in the end, they'll gain those fans back, or else. Or again, baseball's been dying for like 40 years now. So, but it's not going anywhere. So the game will be fine. The game will survive and thrive and change, and that's just life in general.
That is baseball, Susan. How you doing?
Yeah.
All right.
It is what it is.
Let's talk about the Mets and Yankees. 45 minutes into this podcast, we'll finally talk about the two teams that we care about the most. So we got to do that exact thing. And let's start off with the New York Yankees, who we obviously covered their offseason a little bit throughout. We talked about, what additions they made versus didn't made. And now they have a team and they're ready to make moves. They're ready to compete again. They're ready to be out here looking for that elusive 28th championship. So let me just ask you, Drew, off the rip here. What is the vibe like over here in Yankee spring training? What are the big position battles, and how are you feeling generally?
I'm feeling okay. In general, I'm still a little disappointed by their overall moves in the offseason. Again, I don't give any team credit for resigning their players. Again, you had to resign Aaron Judge and you had to resign Anthony Rizzo. But then they didn't really do anything else on the offensive side. And the offense was a real problem last year. And it still looks like it's going to be a big problem until, unless Peraza takes a big step forward, which, he's looked pretty good in camp and Volpe's looked good in camp. But I don't think Volpe's going to be starting the year at the majors. I feel like they want Peraza to start at shortstop and then they'll bring Volpe up. As he gets a little more seasoning at AAA, because I think he only had like 35 at bats or something like that in AAA last year. So, Jason Dominguez has impressed in camp in the short time he's there. He had a bomb out of the stadium in his first at bat against the Phillies in the first spring training game. I had COVID and I farted when he hit the home run, and I thought I shit my pants when he hit it out of the. I hit it out of the stadium. That's how impressed I was.
That was out of left field. I believe that was out of left field.
It was out of the stadium.
It was out of the stadium. Yeah, it was almost out of my pants.
And did you see your pants or no?
We're doubling down on this, huh?
It was close. It was real close. Anyway, so I was really impressed by Jason Dominguez so far in camp. Again, Volpe and Peraza look pretty good. I think that's the biggest thing for me is how are they going to shuffle the infield positions for the Yankees?
Super weird.
Alec is still flabbergasted. I thought I shit my pants comment. Can we circle back on this? Can we explain the fart real quick? Is it like
No, I had COVID for the first time, and I was sitting there.
Everyone knows that farts are just a little bit more dangerous when you have COVID.
Oh, absolutely, dude! I was peeing out my butt for like for a couple of days there, and then I'm watching Jason Dominguez, and he comes up, and I farted, and I was just like, "Oh,
Ebola." I've had COVID many times at this point. And I've never shit my pants in COVID.
I did. I almost shit my pants. I said almost. I said I farted when he hit the window. Like I jumped up.
Let's not drag a brown streak through Andrew's point here, okay?
Oh boy! All right.
Wow.
Let's not drag Drew through the mud. All right. Let's just move on
through the mud butt.
Doubling down, tripling down.
You say mud butt?
Yeah. Don't drag him through the mud butt.
Oh God, I don't even know how we respond from that. Where were we talking? We were talking about
the position battles for the infield. So I think anyway, the most important thing is that the Yankees already have too many infielders at the moment. DJ LeMahieu, I don't think he's even gotten into a game yet. He said he's 100%. The toe is 100% from not having offseason surgery. But who knows at that point? Donaldson's 37 years old who still can't catch up to a fastball. So you have question marks there. Gleyber Torres, he's still a good player, but he can't be your fourth best hitter, which unfortunately he is at the moment. And then you have kids at the shortstop position. So that's, it's trying to figure out that main puzzle for the Yankees and spring training. I feel like that's the main story point for the Yankees in spring training now is just figuring out what you're going to do with all those infielders.
And Alec, do you have any strong takes on who you want to land in any of these spots? Like, are you, keeping up with this spring training here? Not that you're watching, but are you keeping up saying like, I'm hoping this guy pulls out enough success to get this spot to earn his spot?
I'm always hoping for a Pete Alonso situation from a couple of years ago when he first broke into the league, right? We're not going to do any playing time manipulation or whatever it is, so that contract manipulation. I'd love for them to just be like, hey, Volpe, if Volpe were to continue to crush it, right, and he clearly earned the spot, and it really was a meritocracy, give him the shot. I want young guys in left field, and I want a young guy at short this year. Everything else, I think we're fine because you just don't know what you're going to get. So if you go into the season essentially doing what you did to end the postseason last year, which is Peraza at short and Cabrera in left, I'm fine with that because you're going to spell Cabrera too, because from what they're saying about having Judge in left field, which I have every bit of confidence that Judge can play a good left field and be really, excel there. And then Stanton plays better and he's healthier when he's playing the field. So that works for me too. And then you figure it out. You put DJ wherever you have to put him if he's playing. You put him at DH a lot if you can, so that you can, spell things out for him. But give me Peraza and Cabrera to start the season, or Volpe and Cabrera to start the season, and I'm good to go because they'll get better. Maybe they don't both hit. I'm willing to bet one of them is going to hit. Cabrera looked good last year. I see enough out of him to feel like, hey, that guy can be an everyday player. He may not be a superstar. I don't think his ceiling is superstar by any stretch of the imagination, but I'd like to see what they get. It's the same thing about Quickly, right? Until he felt comfortable with his minutes and not getting taken away, he struggled. But then once he felt comfortable knowing that was his job, he excelled. And that's what you have to do with kids sometimes.
Yeah. And they should feel like they have the leash to do that, and they don't typically feel that way, which is the problem. And it's the problem we've been talking about with the Yankees for years now, where whether they're not allowing themselves the leash because of the playtime manipulation and contract stuff, or if it's just they have some sort of mental stop on trusting young people to be their guys. That's been something that's been an issue for them. So I hope personally, as a non-Yankees fan, just for rooting for excitement in New York baseball, that is the case, because I think that last year when they went on their little run towards the end of the year there, that energy brought by Peraza and Cabrera was palpable, and you felt it. You felt the energy shift when you saw those young guys up in the roster? So prediction quickly, Volpe, not what you want to happen, not what you think should happen, but just off what you think will happen. Does Volpe start the year off on the major league team? And if not, when does he come up?
I don't think he's going to start with the team, but I think he'll be up by the middle of May.
I agree. That's exactly what I was going to say.
All right. On to the pitching quickly, because we want to not spend too much more time on this, shit stain of a podcast here. But with the pitching, yeah, I'm going.
Alec is just he's still taken back.
Alec,
He's like he needs to fan himself off. He's like oh my stars.
Very rarely am I like at a loss for words.
Are you flustered right now? Do you have poopy problems? Are you like not comfortable talking about
poop? It wasn't the story. There was zero segue. The first like he's talking about pitch clocks or whatever he's talking about, and then all of a sudden it's like, so I had COVID and I shit my pants. It was like, what? Like, what?
You gotta keep people on their toes, man. That's one thing I learned about doing this podcast. You gotta keep people on their toes, man. You know, we can only talk about things so much. Where if like someone was just like listening along, like, oh man, someone he almost shit his pants after Jason Dominguez hit a home run out of the stadium. Like, that's what the people want.
True statement. I did a podcast with Pat Boyle and Cody O'Connor during football season here, where we were talking about something, and I just like. I cut off after Pat finished his statement and Cody was about to talk. I was like, hold on, guys. I got to go. I might shit my pants. And I left my desk here, turned my mic off, and then left. And then I came back in a few minutes and they were just still talking about the topic. And I was like, did they not stop? I thought that was understood that they were going to stop talking. And then I'd come back, I'd fix it in post and whatever. And then I was like, oh, they kept talking. So I kind of just got back into it and kept talking, and I left it in the podcast. I left it on the YouTube. It's still out.
Sometimes you think something's going to stop, and then it comes out. You know?
There you go. See, now you get it. Now you get it. I'm yelling right now too. So, oh my god. Anyways,
baby.
Let's talk about the pitching really quick. Really for the Yankees, pitching's pretty solid. It's been for the Yankees for some time now. With the rotation, I mean, Garrett Cole, obviously, you feel good about that. Nestor Cortez, when he's fully healthy, you feel good about that. Severino, you feel really good about that based off how he's looked towards the second half of last year. Rodon's new, but he is a good player. Domingo Germán slotted in number 5 right now. From that starting rotation standpoint, any big question marks, any big concerns, or any big stars in the making that you see him?
I think the team has, there's injury concerns there. I mean, Rodon has some injury concerns in the past. Severino's never been fully healthy. Nestor, had that bat with the hamstring, and now he's got one. Now it's flared up again. So I think it's all stuff you have to be monitored, but nothing that's immediate red flags here. So I think it's the same amount of, injury concern that every pitching rotation in the big leagues had. Just each guy has, you're not hoping, you're not you're not crossing your fingers hoping that something bad's going to happen. But like, if something does, like, the Yankees have enough depth, and, Clark Schmidt looks really good in spring training so far. So he's a good guy that can be able to step in if someone else goes down. So they have the pitching depth to be able to, survive someone going on like a 2-week IL stint. So they're looking really great there. That's the one thing I'm not worried about with this team is the rotation.
There you go.
I'm assuming you're also not worried about the bullpen, right?
Yeah, that too. The pitching, they're great. The offense, I'm very skeptical all around about.
There you go. All right, beautiful. Sounds like a plan. It sounds like we have some good things to look forward to for the Yankees. So let's move on to the New York Mets. Cross the train tracks or something like that in New York. River? There's a river?
No. Yeah, there's a river there.
No.
Between the Mets and the Yankees? Yeah.
There's a bridge.
Hardcore river. Anyways, talking about the New York Mets, similar conversations here. The offseason is a little bit more, highfalutin, if you will, than the Yankees, a little bit more action from the Mets perspective, but similarly with the big additions of Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer and Kadai Senga, who will likely be 1, 2, 3 in the rotation. The question,
Correa.
First I was thinking about pitchers. I thought Carlos Carrasco's been on the team already. Correa, obviously, that brings me to my point. So good segue. We'll talk about the pitching in a minute. The big question mark, the big concern for the Mets is also the offense, right? The offense probably played a little bit above their head last year, just based off of the amount of output from Francisco Lindor on the RBI front. Starling Marte and Jeff McNeil had really, really stellar seasons. Mark Hanna, hit the crap out of the ball. People kind of played above their baseball cards for the most part. But even with that being said, Pete Alonso still was the only true power bat in the lineup. He kind of remains as the only true power bat in the lineup, not really counting, Vogelbach. Is he a power guy? Is he just a good hitter? I don't know. So from the perspective of offense for the New York Mets, some of those question marks do still exist about, can they drive in enough runs? Can they be powerful enough as an offense? And they have their own little, conversations and battles about young guys like Brett Beatty and Mark Vientos getting their chances to come up. So, Drew, with this Mets offense, is it an upgrade from last year? Is it the same team running back, hoping for the best case scenario again? And is this question mark serious enough to be a concern?
The Mets, I'm not concerned, as concerned about. Again, the power is the one thing I think the offense is missing, and I think it'll eventually get addressed again. But they re-signed Nimmo. McNeil has played I don't think these are one in blip years that these are their career years. Nimmo has always been a high on base guy, and he did that last year. McNeil, again, I don't think he might win a batting title again, but he was always showed promise. And I think what you can kind of hang your hat on here is that you have Alvarez. He's going to be, he's going to try and, they're going to try to get as much, try to develop him more as a catcher. But I think the bat's there. So whenever he comes up, I think it's going to be a similar timetable as Volpe. I think he'll be up early in the year, and I think you'll be able to upgrade at the catcher position or at the DH position right there. With Alvarez, and then you also have Beatty, and you have Vientos, and you have Mauricio. So you have the Mets have position players in the upper minors that are ready to contribute. So you can, that lower third of the order of Vogelbach, Canna, Escobar, Narvaez, those can get upgraded internally throughout the season. Ideally, it sucks that you lost Carlos Correa and the situation worked out, and that holds not to go on a tangent for them. And I don't really know what the Mets were doing in terms of their medical evaluations, because they used the same exact doctors that the Giants used. And they were surprised that the Giants doctor who said there was something wrong with his leg also told them that something was wrong with his leg. And then they tried to renegotiate. So that whole process kind of, it was very weird to me that they went with the same medical opinions of the Giants. So when it fell apart, that really sucks. And, I feel like they're still missing that extra big bat in there. But again, I feel like they have the depth internally and those talented minor leaguers to be able to substitute them in. And then obviously Steve Cohen is ready to take on a big contract, and, he's ready to throw the, name a highway after Shohei Ohtani in the offseason. He's already talking about, you'll probably offer him $500 million to come play for the Mets. So, you can't discount Uncle Steve there on improving the team, in the drop of a hat.
Alec, you were shaking your head, so I feel like you kind of disagree a little bit.
I think they got worse, objectively worse, and they have question marks everywhere on this team. Your pitching, your entire rotation is a giant question mark. Talk about injury concerns. You have Verlander now, who's.
Let's focus in on the hitters for a second. We're going to get to the pitchers.
Yeah, they're hit, like you said before. They don't have power hitters. They have Pete Alonso, and the only way to win in this league is with power hitting. You have to have it. It's important to have supplemental hitting, which is what they have, and Lindor, for example, was above his power numbers. He wasn't a power hitter last year. You need to have a couple guys who could hit you 35, 40 home runs on your team. You just have to win in this league. It showed up in the playoffs too, right? They didn't score in the playoffs because you have to hit home runs to move forward. Look at what the Yankees did to get out of the first round. They were not hitting anywhere near as good as Cleveland was. You need to have power hitters on that team. Carlos Correa would have been a perfect player for that team. It didn't work out. I'm not going to cast judgment over it because I don't know what happened there, but that would have been a guy that they should have gotten, and they didn't really have a backup plan. And I know you want to only talk about the offense, but I think it's important to talk about the rest of the team.
You can go to it now. You can go to it now.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have a lot of question marks on that rotation. You don't know what Verlander is going to look like, right? He
just won the Cy Young.
Yeah, I understand that, but I think part of that was that he didn't pitch. He's 42 years old, right?
40.
I think he didn't. Okay, you have two pitch. Your number one and your number two are in their 40s. That's not on paper. That is not a recipe for success.
Yeah.
You have Jose Quintana, big question mark. Has had great years, has had really bad years. You have Sengai, or how I don't know how to pronounce his name. Senga. Yeah. Any Japanese pitcher who's come in here for the first time is always going to be a gigantic question mark. I've seen a lot of them fizzle. I've seen more of them fizzle out than do well here in the 30 years I've been watching baseball. I just and their defense. I mean, their bullpen too. I mean, I know you're big on David Robertson, but he's also like 40 years old too. They have a lot of old heads on this team, and you're talking about okay. And I understand that's a fair point of the fact that they have a lot of really high-end prospects that can come up. We don't know how Steve Cohen's going to operate this team with prospects. If he wants to be the new Yankees, the Yankees model is not letting prospects play. He'll probably trade those prospects to get the next big name guy. I don't think he's really he's doing really good short term, but like the team's going to be in weird shape in 3 or 4 years with all of these big names, and he's going to continue to do it until something clicks, and it might not ever click. So I don't know. I'm not saying the Mets are going to be a bad team and by any stretch of the imagination, but they were a 100-win team last year. I think they got worse. I think that division, as has been the case for the past 3 years, is arguably the strongest division in baseball, and it's hard to get out of that if they're going to keep the standings the way that they do. And I'm not confident in this team whatsoever. You would assume that the Braves and the Phillies are going to look good this year and probably outpace them for the solid amount of the season.
Yeah, I definitely think with the rotation, you're gonna have to keep an eye out on Verlander and Scherzer and make sure that they're you have to keep in mind that it's you're playing for the playoffs here. You're not playing for the regular season, so it'll be interesting to go when you're down the stretch. If the Mets are in a tight race for the division, are they going to try to win the division, or are they, trying to play the longer game and keep Verlander and Scherzer fresh for the postseason? Because that's definitely something you're going to have to monitor. They're not 230 inning pitchers anymore. They're probably closer to 180, 190 inning pitchers.
But you have
barring any kind of injury.
Right. You have to keep them down the stretch because the way that the new playoff format works, we saw what happened last year. Nobody's going to be playing for, like it's in basketball, like I'll let go down 2 seeds because I'll wait for the matchup or whatever it is. That having the first round bye was monumental for a lot of these teams. Granted, a lot of them lost in their next round, but like better than losing in the play-in game or whatever they call it. That's the wild card.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that we saw what Verlander looked like towards the end of the season in some of those playoff games. Like he wasn't the reason that they made that playoff run that they did last year. If anything, they won in spite of him. So I don't know. And Scherzer did the same thing too. He imploded in the playoffs. So I don't think that's a recipe for success. And of course, like you said before, any team has to worry about injuries. This team in particular has to really worry about injuries. Everyone on there has gotten a Tommy John or has some serious. Quintana's an injury concern. Senga's coming over. Japanese pitchers historically get hurt a lot, and for whatever the reason is when they come over. And then Scherzer and Verlander are gigantic injury concerns. So I don't know. This team could hit. And I think the Yankees, remember last year when we said Yankees have the higher floor, lower ceiling, the Mets have I think it's the opposite this year. I think the Yankees have the higher ceiling, and the Mets have probably have the better floor. But I don't know. There's a lot of variance with this team.
And that being said, you still believe the Mets their floor is still pretty high, right? You still think they're an 88 win floor or something like that, 86 win.
I think they're a 92 win season, a 2-win team this year.
Right, which again, that should get them into the playoffs, but in this division, it very well may not. It very well may not. And you saw what the Phillies did last year. You don't necessarily have to be that division winner, but you like to be. You very much like to be. And if the Mets won the division last year, who knows how differently their postseason goes. I think your question marks are fair, just because you're relying on a 40-year-old and a 38-year-old and Max Scherzer to be your 1 and 2. There is definitely still a universe where this clicks well. in the regular season. And the playoffs are a different conversation. But there's a chance if Kodai Senga is what he could be, or even 80% of what we think he could be, he's a fantastic number 3 starter. Carrasco was solid last year, and Quintana is a question mark because of the ups and downs of his career. So I agree. I don't think it's like any sort of guarantee that they're going to be a juggernaut this season. I think the Phillies having this gravitas now of a team that just made the World Series and all their moves actually paying off, when for most of last year, if we actually remember correctly and think about what we felt in the middle of last year, the Phillies were fine. The Phillies were a whatever good team. They were like what we were talking about with the Knicks earlier, right? Like they were through the threshold of being mediocre, but they weren't special. And then all their guys started clicking. All their stuff worked out well, and now they're looked at as a juggernaut this season coming up. So
yeah, but that's unfair too, though, because Bryce Harper was out for the vast majority of last season. I mean, he had injuries.
He was fantastic, and then he was like off the charts good. Yeah, that's a fine point. And back to the offense real quick. I don't know if they have holes per se. Like they don't have real weaknesses from an offensive or lineup perspective. Talking about offense and defense, really, but they don't have really holes. But there are a couple of places where you just want more, right? And when Escobar, Canna, and I don't want to loop Marte into that because he's better than that, but like the Escobar and Cannas of the world are super mediocre. Like, what does that mean for this team? Does that mean that they're not pushing across 5 runs because of the timely hitting and just racking up RBIs in timely situations? That power thing is more likely to come to a head this year than it did last year, obviously, because it worked out last year in the regular season. So I'm concerned from like putting extra runs on the board, but it's not like you could point to one specific person and say he's the problem. Does that make sense, Drew?
Yeah, no, you can't, unlike the Yankees, you can point to Josh Donaldson and say he's not going to contribute most likely not going to contribute offensively. Aaron Hicks is not going to likely contribute offensively. Jose Trevino is not likely going to contribute offensively. So like the Yankees have a lot more holes there, but the Yankees are definitely a lot more top heavy than the Mets do. The Mets have a little bit more depth, 1 through 5. When I'd say the Yankees probably have a good solid 4 hitters in their lineup rather than the 6, 7. I would personally feel more comfortable with on the team offensively.
Yeah. And it's just a weird dichotomy, really. And that's going to be interesting to see how the Mets hang this year, because there's a chance that, we sound silly and they are a 100-win team again this year. They have that capability inside this roster right now. And, we'll have to see what happens with these young guys. Because if Beatty does get a chance, I mean, they brought him up last year, right? He already got his taste. So the fact that, is he going to start at third base to start the season? Probably not, but he will likely be a part of this team moving forward. And if he gets his chance and works out, that could be another guy who's a power bat. Vientos isn't like a huge power hitter. But like these guys have the chance. And I think, Alec, to your point of Steve Cohen, maybe not being sure how to use prospects or if he wants to use prospects, the fact that they put them in situations last year, or at least really just Beatty, even though he kind of failed, like they tried it last year. They tried it. It makes me believe that they're going to probably try it again this year. And if that leads to them making a big trade for whoever the big guy on the market is going to be, that will probably end up stinging a little bit. It probably will, but I don't think he's going to be afraid to try them out is my main point.
Yeah, you don't know. I mean, I'm looking at this like this isn't the Mets team that you grew up with anymore, right? They are the new Yankees, right? And I don't mean they're surpassing the Yankees, but they're in like the same stratosphere, and they're going to operate, I would assume, similarly to the Yankees, right? It's all nice and new in the beginning when you do things, and Steve Cohen's flaunting his money around, but like realistically, like, you can't run a team like that. You just can't continue this for forever, right? He's trying to change the dynamic and how it goes. But I know from watching the Yankees operate like this my whole life that it comes with some real flaws, right? If you're sacrificing pitching and you're constantly going for lottery ticket pitching, which is what they're doing this year, usually doesn't work out. This is the first time the Yankees have ever, last year was the first time the Yankees had a pitching rotation that I was like, holy shit, the Yankees have a really good pitching rotation in my entire life. That includes, some of the best championship teams that I saw and like 09 and everything like that. They had a lockdown rotation last year. They never do that. But it's hard to win when you don't have a lockdown rotation, right? It's also hard to win when you have a lot of guys who are doing one thing. if you don't have a dynamic roster and lineup where you have guys that are slapping the ball around and getting on base, you also have guys that are hitting home runs. If you rely too much on guys that are getting on base or rely too much on hitting home runs, it's just different. And then all of this is going through the perspective of they're not. This is now it's championship or bust for them, right? So when I'm saying like I think it's question marks, they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to make the playoffs like the Yankees do every year. But that's not, it's not what it is anymore. You have to look at it as if, hey, does this team look like they're a contender or not? And I don't see as of now that they are someone who I could see in the World Series.
And to go back to the pitching, concerns and top, and like you have to think about it in this way that where DeGrom only gave them 11 starts last year. If DeGrom was still on this team, would DeGrom be as big of a question mark as Verlander is right now? I would say so.
But I said that last year too, and that was accurate. But it's not just that. Like Taijuan Walker was good for them. Chris Bassett was good for them. It's not just Jacob DeGrom leaving. You have a fundamentally different. There's nobody left from 2 years ago besides from Carrasco, right? So even Max Scherzer is still kind of a new guy. He was only played last year, and he was hurt for a lot of last year too. So it's not something you can set your watch to with this rotation at all. And you have an extra year on Scherzer and an extra year on Verlander that you can't count that out. These guys aren't 27 years old.
Yeah,
no, and I get it.
So I mean, I think that pretty much brings us to the end of this episode. This is great. I'm glad we finally got to talk about the Mets and Yankees because we kind of farted around for a little while there talking about other stuff. Sorry, Alec, I can't turn it off. Anyways, real quick before we end up, right now I'm looking at DraftKings odds. We're not going to obviously make our over/under picks right now, but just so we know, the Mets and Yankees both at 94.5 wins on the over/under front. The Mets have a minus 105 on that number. The Yankees have a plus 100 on that number. A little bit interesting there, being that the Yankees have minus 120 on the under. Very minor little gambling crap, but Vegas is saying they think the Mets' chances of hitting over 94.5 is like that much bigger than the Yankees. And then on the front of making the playoffs, Mets are minus 500 to make the playoffs. Again, to Alec's point, his question marks are not about this team's ability to compete in a regular season, but to go beyond that. So Vegas also expecting them to make the playoffs at minus 500 and the Yankees at minus 425 to make the playoffs. So, boys, this means we should be in store for quite the exciting season for both of our teams here. I'm pumped for it. And we talked about watching games and how I don't watch as many games as you. I do frequent the Mets radio network. And I got to say, shout out to my boy, Pat McCarthy, old college classmate, teammate at TCNJ. He is now the pregame, postgame host on Mets radio and will be filling in for Howie when he takes off. So Pat McCarthy, my boy, congratulations. That'd be dope. I look forward to listening to him.
Plug the pod, Pat. Plug the pod.
Yeah, I gotta get him on. We've talked about it. It's one of those things that I've texted him and talked about him for 6 years about coming on the podcast. We just never done it. So what better time than the present? So shout out to Pat. Shout out to the Mets. Shout out to the Yankees. That's all good stuff. Alec Argento, last words from you?
No, go Knicks.
Okay. Drew, how about you?
I'm farting with excitement about baseball season, and I'm farting with excitement about the New York Rangers. So I'm just very gassy. My excitement is just so gassy.
Congrats to your cocks.
And that's all we have today for Subway Sports Talk. And I just also got to say this for Drew real quick, just because it kind of feels relevant. So that's all we got for Subway Sports Talk. My name is Peter Kennedy for Alec Argento and Andrew Calagna. That's some baseball talk, some Knicks talk. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review on your podcast app, as well as subscribe to the notification bell on YouTube. Drop a comment in the YouTube page as well. That really helps videos get in front of more eyeballs and more ear holes. So we appreciate you guys for tuning in as always. So that's all we got. We'll talk to you soon.